What transforms a good person into a monster? Is it circumstance, power, or some dormant darkness within? The answer is more unsettling than you think. Monsters aren't born, they're made. And the process isn't some dramatic fall from grace. It's a slow, insidious erosion of morality, one justified step at a time. Think about it. The worst atrocities in history weren't committed by snarling beasts but by ordinary people who believed they were doing the right thing. The Nazi bureaucrat signing deportation orders, the cult follower obeying without question, the corporate executive exploiting workers while telling themselves it's just business. These aren't anomalies. They're warnings. The line between good and evil isn't a fortified wall. It's a fraying rope, and every compromise, every act of self-deception, wears it thinner. So ask yourself, under the right pressure, the right ideology, the right fear, would you cross it? Or are you already on your way? Consider the Stanford prison experiment, where average college students, given roles as guards or prisoners, descended into cruelty within days. No one forced them. They simply embraced the power they were handed. That's the terrifying truth. Monstrosity doesn't require malice, just opportunity and a story to justify it. We like to believe evil is something out there, a force we'd recognize and resist. But the real danger lies in our ability to rationalize, to reframe harm as necessity, to see ourselves as heroes even as we become villains. The first step toward monstrosity isn't hatred, it's self-righteousness. So tell me, what do you tell yourself to sleep at night? What lines have you already crossed without realizing it? Power doesn't corrupt, it reveals. Strip away the social niceties, the consequences, the watchful eyes of judgment, and what's left? The raw, unfiltered self. And if that self has spent years nurturing resentment, entitlement, or unhealed wounds, the mask will slip. Look at the abusive boss who was once the overlooked employee, the tyrant who was once the bullied child. Their cruelty isn't random. It's the culmination of suppressed rage finally given permission to breathe. But here's the uncomfortable twist. You're not immune. Every slight you've swallowed, every injustice you've endured, what if you had the power to retaliate without consequence? Would you be the bigger person? Or would you, like so many before you, become what you once despised? This is the paradox of morality. We judge others by their actions but ourselves by our intentions. The serial killer is a monster, but the neglectful parent who shaped him, just doing their best. The corrupt politician is evil, but the voters who empowered him out of selfish interest. Misinformed, we distance ourselves from the chain of causality, refusing to see how small, seemingly harmless choices contribute to the creation of monsters. Because if we acknowledged that, we'd have to confront our own complicity. So I'll ask you directly, what injustices do you tolerate because they don't affect you? What systems do you benefit from that destroy others? And when history looks back, will you be the hero, the bystander, or the villain? Why do good people do nothing while evil thrives? Because passivity is the silent accomplice to monstrosity. The world isn't destroyed by those who burn it down. It's betrayed by those who watch and say, "This isn't my problem." Look at every genocide, every systemic oppression, every corporate scandal. The architects of suffering were enabled not just by active collaborators, but by the millions who turned away, who told themselves they were powerless, who chose comfort over courage. And here's the brutal truth. Neutrality is a myth. There is no middle ground between justice and oppression, only the side you consciously or unconsciously support. So ask yourself, when the moment comes, will you stand? Or will history record you as just another face in the crowd of the complicit? The German philosopher Martin Niemöller wrote, "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out." His words haunt us because they expose the lie of innocence through inaction. You don't have to wield the knife to be responsible for the wound. Every time you ignore cruelty, every time you laugh at a bigoted joke to avoid awkwardness, every time you prioritize your comfort over someone else's dignity, you're not just allowing evil, you're training yourself to accept it. And the more you tolerate, the more you will tolerate until one day, you wake up and realize you've become the kind of person who lets monsters win. The descent doesn't start with a leap into darkness. It starts with a single step backward. So tell me, what lines will you refuse to cross? Or are you already stepping over them without noticing? What if the real monsters aren't the ones who revel in their cruelty, but the ones who never question their own goodness? Think about it. The most destructive forces in history weren't mustache-twirling villains cackling about evil. They were true believers, people utterly convinced of their own righteousness. The inquisitors burning heretics to save their souls. The revolutionaries executing dissenters for the greater good. The abusive partner who claims, "I do this because I love you." When you believe you're morally superior, you grant yourself permission to do monstrous things. And the more noble your cause, the more unforgivable your actions become, because you're not just harming others, you're betraying the very principles you claim to uphold. So I'll ask you directly, what do you believe in so fiercely that you'd sacrifice your humanity to defend it? And how would you even know if you'd already started? This is the hypocrisy of virtue. We judge others by their worst actions but ourselves by our best intentions. The activist screaming at a stranger online for justice. The parent crushing their child's spirit for their own good. The politician lying to the public to protect them. We all tell ourselves we're the hero of our own story. But what if you're not? What if the traits you pride yourself on, your convictions, your loyalty, your sense of duty, are the very things that could twist you into something unrecognizable? The road to hell isn't paved with good intentions. It's paved with the unshakable belief that you could never end up there. So here's the uncomfortable question. What truths about yourself are you refusing to see? And who would you have to become to finally face them? The most dangerous lie we tell ourselves is that evil is something external, a force that attacks from the outside. But what if corruption begins in the mirror? Every monster was once a child with dreams. Every tyrant was once an idealist who believed the ends justify the means. The difference between a hero and a villain isn't their goals. It's what they're willing to sacrifice to achieve them. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You are always one rationalization away from crossing a line you swore you never would. The soldier who tortures for intel to save lives. The whistleblower who ruins careers for the truth. The lover who manipulates to protect the relationship. When does conviction become fanaticism? When does passion become obsession? There's no signpost marking the descent, just a series of small, justifiable steps into the abyss. So tell me, what cause do you care about so deeply that you'd lose yourself in it? And how would you even know when you're gone? History's greatest atrocities weren't committed by people who woke up deciding to be evil. They were committed by people who woke up believing they had no other choice. The banality of evil isn't that it's boring. It's that it's reasonable. The Nazi accountant wasn't twirling his fingers like a cartoon villain. He was crunching numbers, ensuring trains ran on time, telling himself it was just logistics. The cult leader doesn't see himself as a predator. He's a shepherd guiding lost sheep. And you're not the exception. The same psychological mechanisms that allowed them to sleep at night are alive in you right now. The only question is, what narrative are you crafting to excuse the inexcusable? What harmless label are you slapping on something monstrous to make it palatable? Wake up. The most terrifying monsters don't live under the bed. They live in the space between your self-image and your actions. Why do good people enable monsters? Because fear is a more powerful motivator than morality. Look around you, how many people stay silent in the face of injustice not because they agree, but because they're afraid? Afraid of losing their job, their status, their safety. Afraid of being ostracized, targeted, or alone. This is how systems of oppression sustain themselves. Not because everyone actively participates, but because enough people are too terrified to resist. And here's the brutal part. Your compliance isn't neutral. Every time you bite your tongue, every time you look the other way, you're casting a vote for the world as it is. The German citizens who turned a blind eye to Kristallnacht weren't Nazis. They were just people who didn't want trouble. The The employees who ignore harassment in the office aren't bigots. They're just people who want to keep their careers. But history doesn't remember the why of your silence. It only remembers that you were silent. So ask yourself, what are you afraid of losing? And is it worth your soul? But it's not just fear, it's inertia. The human brain is wired to prefer the familiar, even when the familiar is monstrous. We normalize the unacceptable simply because it's what we know. Domestic violence victims return to abusers. Citizens obey corrupt regimes. Employees tolerate exploitation. Why? Because the devil you know feels safer than the devil you don't. But normalization is the oxygen of evil. The first time you witness cruelty, you're shocked. The 10th time, you're annoyed. The 100th time, you don't even notice. And by the time you realize what you've accepted, it's too late, you've become part of the machine. So here's the wake-up call. Complacency is complicity. Every injustice you tolerate today becomes the standard you defend tomorrow. What horrors have you already started to accept as just the way things are? And what will it take for you to finally say enough? What if the real dividing line isn't between good people and monsters, but between those who question themselves and those who don't? The scariest individuals in history weren't the ones who struggled with their conscience. They were the ones who never doubted their actions at all. Psychopaths don't lose sleep over their choices. Fanatics don't wrestle with moral ambiguity. The true danger lies in certainty, the absolute conviction that you're on the right side of history. Because once you believe that, anything is permissible. The witch hunters burning women alive weren't plagued by guilt. They genuinely thought they were saving souls. The suicide bomber doesn't question his mission. He's convinced he's a martyr. And you? What beliefs do you hold so tightly that you'd never dare examine them? What truths are you so sure of that you'd silence anyone who challenges them? This is the paradox of self-awareness. The more convinced you are of your own goodness, the more capable you become of evil. Because introspection is the immune system of the soul. Without it, corruption spreads unchecked. The factory farm owner who never visits the slaughterhouse. The politician who never meets the people their policies destroy. The bully who never sees the tears of their target. Distance and dehumanization are the tools of monsters, but they're also the tools of ordinary people who refuse to look too closely at their own impact. So here's the challenge. When was the last time you truly questioned your own motives? Not the sanitized version you tell the world, the raw, unfiltered truth. What have you done that you're secretly ashamed of? What harm have you caused that you've never admitted to yourself? The road to redemption starts with one unbearable realization. You are not the hero you think you are. The question is, are you brave enough to face that? Why do we forgive some monsters and condemn others? Because society doesn't judge evil by its impact, it judges it by its aesthetics. The serial killer who charmed his neighbors is remembered as a monster. The CEO whose decisions caused thousands of deaths is remembered as a controversial innovator. The difference isn't the body count, it's the presentation. We forgive crimes wrapped in suits, polished with PR, and justified by spreadsheets. But this isn't just hypocrisy, it's a survival mechanism. If we acknowledged that the worst monsters wear smiles and shake hands, we'd have to question every authority figure in our lives. And that's a terrifying prospect. So instead, we cling to the fairy tale version of evil, the lone wolf, the obvious outlier, the other. But what if the real threat isn't the stranger in the alley? It's the executive in the corner office, the politician on your ballot, the influencer shaping your worldview? This is the grand illusion of civilization. We've created systems where atrocity doesn't require malice, just indifference. No single employee at a tobacco company wanted kids to get cancer, they just wanted a paycheck. No single banker in the 2008 crash wanted families to lose their homes, they just wanted their bonus. The modern world is built on distributed responsibility, a labyrinth of paperwork and plausible deniability where no one feels like the villain. But here's the truth. If you benefit from a broken system, you are part of that system. You don't get to enjoy the fruits of exploitation and call yourself innocent. So I'll ask you directly, What injustices are you profiting from right now? And what would it cost you to actually change that? The unsettling reality is that most people would rather live with the guilt than give up the perks. Which means the real question isn't why good people turn into monsters. It's why we're all so willing to play along. What if the key to preventing monstrosity isn't morality, but accountability? Think about it. The darkest chapters in human history happened when people had power without consequences. The slave owner facing no rebellion, the dictator silencing all dissent, the abusive partner gaslighting their victim into staying. Evil thrives in the absence of resistance. But here's the twist. Accountability isn't just about laws or punishments. It's about visibility. The Stanford prison experiment spiraled because the guards thought no one was watching. The Milgram shocks continued because the teachers were told someone else was responsible. The greatest safeguard against monstrosity isn't some inherent goodness in humanity. It's the certainty that someone will see what you do. So ask yourself, who are you when no one's looking? What would you do if you knew you'd never get caught? Your answer isn't just a hypothetical. It's a mirror. But accountability isn't just external, it's internal. The people who resist corruption aren't magically immune to temptation. They've just drawn lines they refuse to cross. The German citizens who hid Jews during World War II. The whistleblowers who risked everything to expose lies. The ordinary people who intervene when they see abuse. What separates them isn't some unattainable courage. It's the decision in advance that some things are non-negotiable. Because in the moment of crisis, you won't rise to the occasion, you'll default to your standards. So here's the challenge. What are your non-negotiables? Not the ones you think you'd uphold, the ones you've proven through action. When has your integrity cost you something? If the answer is never, then you're not as principled as you believe. And that's the slippery slope, because the person who compromises on little things will eventually compromise on everything. So why do good people turn into monsters? Because monstrosity isn't an anomaly. It's a possibility latent in everyone. The right pressure, the right ideology, the right opportunity. That's all it takes. But here's the counterweight. So is greatness. The same mechanisms that twist people into villains can elevate them into heroes. It all depends on what they feed. Resentment or resilience. Fear or courage. Apathy or action. You are not a fixed entity. You are a collection of choices, and every decision nudges you closer to one pole or the other. The question isn't, could I become a monster? It's, what will I do today to make sure I don't? This isn't about guilt. It's about responsibility. The realization that morality isn't a badge you earn once and keep forever. It's a fire you have to tend daily, or it will go out. So here's your call to arms. Stop pretending evil is something that happens to other people. Stop confusing your intentions with your impact. Start interrogating your own capacity for harm. Because the only way to ensure you don't become a monster is to stare that potential in the face, and then fight it every single day. The world isn't divided into heroes and villains. It's divided into those who confront their shadows and those who let them grow. Which side will you stand on? The choice is yours, and it's being made right now in the quiet of your next decision.